In this short video, I'd like to talk you through the preparation of a table using Word. Now, the table that you see in front of you is a table that you will have seen also in your lab manual, both in the general guidelines in the preparation of a lab report, as well as in a separate document in how to prepare a table using Microsoft Word. I'm making this video because I find that some students find instructions about how to use the computer more easily understood if they see a video. In front of you, you see an example of a well-prepared table. There's a very good title at the top, and what I mean by very good is it's a descriptive title. Note that the title for a table should always go at the top. And what I mean by descriptive is it indicates what is being tabulated and why it's being tabulated. So what's being tabulated? Well, temperatures. Why is it being tabulated? Well, there's mention of the boiling point of water. So clearly these are temperatures in estimation of the boiling point of water. How much water? 100 mils of water. Who's doing it? 3 groups of students. And in the end, they're going to come up with average boiling points. The last thing that's indicated in this title is the fact that the measurements were done with a Vernier temperature sensor. So in a sense, this table stands alone. I could essentially repeat this experiment using the same conditions that these groups of students used. I won't know exactly how they were warming the water or what sort of beakers they were using, but all the salient features are indicated in the information provided by this table. Okay, so how are we going to prepare this? Now, I'm not going to repeat the writing of the title, but I will prepare the rest of the table with you. So one of the things to take note in this particular table is how many rows and how many columns. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, and we have 4 columns. So that's something in a sense that you need to know in advance. Or, of course, you can always make an adjustment later on, but it's easier if you know this in advance. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to this tab, Insert, and then under Table, we're going to aim for those 6 rows. So there are 3, 4, 5, 6 rows and 4 columns. So I'm just going to put that in. Now right now this looks nothing like our professional looking table above, but soon it will be. One of the other things that would be great to do at this stage is to work on the row size, the spacing in the rows, as well as the spacing in the columns. So one of the things that I notice is that the rows in our table, the professional looking table, are larger than the rows that I have in the grid below. So what I'll do is I'll select all of the cells here, and then most of the modifications to our table can be done up here under the table tools, the design or the layout. So in this case, I'm going to click on the design and I can see, oh, that doesn't seem to have anything that I need. So I'm going to look over here, layout. Ah, yes, distribute the rows and the height. And so I'm going to choose a greater height for my rows, and it'll apply to all of the rows. So there's 0.2 inches, there's 0.3 inches. I think that's suitable for my rows. Also the widths, and I think the widths in this table with my grid lines here is larger than my professional looking table above, and so I'm going to reduce the size, maybe something like this. Now note, I don't need to make a table that looks exactly like the one above, but that approaches the important features. You'll have also noticed that I centered, or in a sense moved my table, the whole table over to the center. Okay, so the next steps then are to put in the data. Now one of the things that you may notice here is that this temperature term seems to span across these 3 rows, which include the data from 3 different students. The way that we can do this is we can merge 3 cells that will include that temperature term. So I selected the top 3 cells here, and then you can certainly do this in a number of ways. Up here I can click merge cells, but also I want to point out to you that you can also right click and click this, merge cells. So now that's merged. And rather than spend the time typing, I'm just going to copy the various things that you would have normally had to type. So I'm going to copy the temperature term in here. I'll organize its orientation, its spacing or centering in a minute. I'm also going to put in the rest of the data. So understand that normally you would have to type all of this in. So copy and then paste the rest of the data. So I'm going to paste it in this fashion. So there it is. So assume that I typed all of this in. Okay. Now, one of the things that you'll notice about this temperature term is it's not centered properly. We want, in a sense, to have it centered over the 3 columns for student 1, 2, and 3. Very easy to center. So I clicked inside that cell, and now I'm still under the Layout tab. And over here, I can pick the various kinds of centering. In this case, I really do want it to be right in the middle of the cell. So I'll click that. And notice that when I copied the rest of this data into my table, in fact, all of it is centered right in the middle. Now, it doesn't have to be. It could be right justified, or pardon me, left justified or right justified. But for this particular table, we decided to center it all within each of the cells. So this is a pretty good looking table, but it's still not the professional quality. And in part, the professional quality has to do with taking out the grid lines and in leaving only behind lines that help organize the table or highlight the various features. The way that I know how to do this is in a sense to remove all the grid lines. So now I selected everything in my table. And again, there are various ways of doing this. One of the ways is to come back over here to Design and then under the borders. And essentially, I'm going to pick that there are going to be no borders. I also want to point out that if you're working from the Home tab, we can come here and make various selections. So no border. All right, so either way, we have no borders. Now we want to put back the relevant lines. And note that in a professional looking table, we always have a border line at the top, a border line at the bottom, and then the appropriate border lines within the table. So I'm going to start at the bottom here and just select all 4 columns. Now I'm going to work from actually the Home tab, but I could go to the Design tab and put in the appropriate border. So now I select this and I'm looking for a border that's at the bottom. So bottom border, there you go. I'm now going to go to, well, how about we put in these borders right here. So I select the 3 cells that correspond to the 3 different students, and once again, bottom border. I'm going to select this temperature term and bottom border. All right, now I've almost put in all the borders. To put on in the top, I've got to once again select this temperature term, and now I'm going to put in a top border right here. But you can see that it doesn't complete. What we want to do is have a border across the entire top. So I'm going to now go into the cell that's just above trial here and click again. And now we've put in all the appropriate borders. When you organize it in this way, that is when you organize your table in this way, it keeps it clean. It's very clear that the trials are associated with the 3 different experiments that were done by each of the 3 different students. And at the bottom here, of course, we have the average. It's very clear that all this data corresponds to student 1, and then student 2, and then student 3, and the corresponding, of course, averages. It's all very clear that all the data underneath the students are temperature data in the units of Celsius. So we're not repeating the units. We're not repeating the term temperature at the top of each of these columns. And so it's a very efficient way to represent this information. And I hope that you will use this as guidance in preparing your tables for your various lab reports.